Hello and welcome. My name is Claudia the Library Lobster, and I am excited to shell you about this walking tour. Since at least 9000 BC, Gloucester has been home to indigenous people living here and using the natural resources in their daily lives. The Pawtucket people and the Englishmen, who arrived in 1606, led by Samuel de Champlain, were originally friendly with one another. But sickness brought by the English decimated the indigenous population, and the friendship soon disappeared. In 1616, Gloucester was founded again by John Smith, who named it Trebizonda. In 1623, the Dorchester Company arrived in Gloucester and started a settlement. As the colonists settled, they moved further inland to what is now known as Dogtown, which you will be visiting later. Gloucester is so old that it's been around for so many key moments in American history, so it's no surprise that you will find many monuments, memorials, historic homes, statues, and more around the island. Unfortunately, we won't be able to see them all on this walking tour, but we're going to be showing you a wide variety. The tour kicks off right here at the library with the fish fountain right in front. With that, I will pass you along to Jackie, who will be giving you the tour. I'm sure you will have a good time.
To start the tour, I wanted to start right here at the Sawyer Free Library. I'm sure that many of you have walked by this fountain, but do you know the history behind it? Often referred to as the fish fountain, the actual name of this fountain is Sea Harvest. The fountain was designed and created by Aristides Demetrios, whose work can be found all over the United States. So what is Aristides' connection to Gloucester? Aristides is the son of Virginia Lee Burton and George Demetrios. Virginia Lee Burton may sound familiar as she is the author and illustrator of Katie and the Big Snow and The Little House, just to name a few. George Demetrios is a well-known Gloucester sculptor who also taught art here. Now that we know a little bit more about the creator and his connection to Gloucester, let's talk about the fountain itself. So, though the fountain is green, it's actually made of bronze. Over the years, due to exposure from different elements, the bronze has turned green. At the top of the fountain, you will find mackerel, and closer to the bottom of the fountain, you will see fish like cod and haddock. Since Gloucester is a fishing community, this fountain is more than fitting. Around the different neighborhoods of Gloucester and celebrate those men from the neighborhoods that fought during the Civil War. While we will be exploring these memorials later in this tour, I wanted to speak about the memorial you see here. This statue stands in City Hall's yard and memorializes all the men from Gloucester who fought during the Civil War. This particular memorial was dedicated on September 11, 1879, and in the inscription reads, "In memory of the soldiers and sailors of Gloucester who fought in the war at 1861 to 1865 for preservation of the Union, erected by Post 45 G.A.R. 1879. The base of the monument is made with local Cape Ann granite, and the Statue of Liberty sitting atop the base is made of bronze, just like the fountain we talked about. According to historical documentation, the processions and ceremonies that occurred in relation to the dedication of the memorial were some of the most imposing the city had ever seen at the time. Many groups and citizens of Gloucester participated in the procession and ceremony. The statue was presented to the city as a gift by Honorable Fitz J. Babson and was accepted on behalf of the city by Mayor Williams. The next small portion of this tour will showcase the other Civil War memorials found throughout the city.
This is the Annisquam Civil War Memorial. It was dedicated on June 17, 1890. Its inscription reads, "In memory of the soldiers of Annisquam, 1861 to 1865, our tribute 1890. This memorial lists the names of those who fought and their date of death as well as their age. This memorial is located on Leonard Street at the entrance to the Mount Adna Cemetery." This is the Lanesville Soldiers Monument. It was dedicated on September 29, 1885, and the inscription reads, "In memory of our honored dead who fought for the preservation of the Union 1861 to 1865. The memorial also lists the names of the men who lost their lives in the regiment that they fought in. This memorial is located in Langsford Street Cemetery on Langsford. This is the Riverdale Martyrs Memorial. This memorial was dedicated on June 16, 1886, and the inscription reads, "Riverdale Martyrs in the War of the Rebellion, 1861 to 1865. It also lists the names of the men in the regiment that they fought in. This memorial is called the East Gloucester Civil War Dead, dedicated on May 27, 1868, and the inscription reads, "In memory of the men from East Gloucester who lost their lives in the rebellion of 1861. The memorial also lists the names of the men who lost their lives. This memorial is located in Mount Pleasant Cemetery on Mount Pleasant Ave. This is a GAR memorial, dedicated on May 30th, 1896. The inscription reads, "Presented to Colonel Allen, Post 45, GAR, by Colonel Allen, WRC number 77, May 30th, 1896. This memorial lists the names of the men who fought in the war. This memorial is located in Cherry Hill Cemetery on Marsh Street."
The monument you see behind me is the Spanish-American War Memorial. The monument was placed on May 26, 1924, under the supervision of Alderman Martha Brooks, who was in charge of the project for the city. There was a ceremony for this memorial, and it was led by Colonel Charles F. Watson, and 2 members of the USS Gloucester were present as special guests. This memorial contains 4 bronze castings, 1 on each of its sides. The first tablet shows the men of the G Company 8 Massachusetts Infantry U.S. Volunteers being reviewed by General Maximo Gomez at Mantes, Cuba on February 20th, 1889. And the inscription reads, "Gloucester men, 100 strong, answered the nation's call to arms in the war for the liberation of Cuba. Bravely they endured in camp and field." The next tablet shows the USS Gloucester sinking Spanish destroyers Pluton and Puro of Santiago, Cuba on July 3, 1898. The inscription on this tablet reads, "Inspired by the deeds of their forefathers, nearly 300 men of Gloucester volunteered for naval service. Their seafaring experience contributed largely to America's decisive victory." The third tablet reads, "Gloucester honors her men who served in the war with Spain. Volunteers all arrived in 1923. And the last side of the memorial has an emblem representing the Spanish-American War veterans with the word Philippine Islands in Cuba, 1898 to 1902 engraved into it. This monument was dedicated on November 11, 1923. Like many other monuments and memorials on this tour, this one too was made from granite and bronze. This house is the Judith Sargent Murray House and was built in 1782. Judith Sargent Murray was born in Gloucester on May 1, 1751. Murray was known for being a philosopher, writer, and an advocate for women's equality. Her most well-known work was an essay entitled On the Equality of the Sexes, which was published in 1791. In 1793, Murray lived in Boston, and her play, The Medium, which she wrote in 1795, was likely the first play by an American author to be produced on stage. Though we know of her works today, Murray would often publish under a pseudonym, which is a different name. For example, when she was writing for the Massachusetts magazine, she wrote under a pseudonym and assumed a male identity for it. After Murray left this home, the house was owned and lived in by merchants, patriots, and leaders of the community. Today, this beautiful home is a wonderful museum that helps to keep the memory of Judith Sargent Murray alive. I'm sure many of you have heard the name Fitzhenry Lane or have gone to see his work at the Cape Ann Museum. But did you know that Lane was America's leading marine artist? of the mid-19th century, and he was born in Gloucester. Lane was born on December 19, 1804, and at birth was given the name Nathaniel Rogers Lane, though he would go on later to change it to the name we all know today. However, for a while, the belief was that he had changed his name to Fitzhugh Lane, and you may still see some books in the library that reference him by this name, or you may hear people around town reference him by this. The change in his second name was only something that was discovered during my childhood, so in history standards it is still considered pretty recently. While not much is known of his early life, we do know that something caused Lane to have issues with walking, although accounts do show he was able to walk with crutches or a cane. Many believe that his difficulty walking is what led him to be such an amazing artist, as it was something he could do that did not require him to walk or even move around that much. Behind his statue, you can see that there is a granite house. This was Lane's home and studio, and he started to live in this home in 1851. The view from his home allowed him to design some of his best works. The statue of Lane was designed by Alfred Duca, who presented it to the city in December of 1996. The statue was cast after Duca's death and dedicated to the town on August 30th, 1997. The sandals that you notice behind the statue were meant to represent Duca's. Much like Lane himself, this statue looks out to the sea to draw inspiration. Standing across from the Fitzhenry Lane statue and house at the Solomon Jacobs Landing. Solomon Jacobs was originally from Newfoundland, and he fished in the early 1900s. He was known for his ability to catch large amounts of mackerel, which earned him the title King of the Mackerel Killers. Though originally from Newfoundland, Jacobs moved to Gloucester as a young man, and within just a few years was a highline captain. He was controversial, but many of that time would have agreed that he was the most famous schooner captain in Gloucester. At age 70, he also signed up as an ensign in the U.S. Navy Coastal Patrol, which helps to show his enduring spirit. Prior to this area becoming a park and landing, it was filled with multi-family homes, warehouses, and more. Most of these buildings that were once found in this area were destroyed through urban renewal. It was only through community action that Fitzhenry Lane's house was not destroyed during this time as well. Urban renewal took place in Gloucester between the 1960s and 70s. The park itself was created through urban renewal in 1975. The landing was established by the city in 1999 and was the first public landing in Gloucester in decades. You will see the Joan of Arc statue that was created by Anna Hyatt Huntington. This is one of several that was created. The statue was a gift to Gloucester in 1921 from France. It was a memorial for all the men who gave their lives during World War I, and it was also rededicated in 2001 to honor these men as well. I'd also like to share a few fun facts about the statue with you. As you can see, Joan of Arc is riding a horse. The horse she is riding in this particular statue was actually based off of one of Gloucester's fire horses, who modeled for Anna Hyatt Huntington while she was crafting this statue. Another interesting detail you might notice about this statue is the way that Joan of Arc is facing. While she is facing the Legion, an obvious choice, she is also facing away from where most traffic enters Gloucester. While you may think this was a deliberate choice, it was in fact not a concern at that time. When this statue was placed, there was only one way into Gloucester, and that was over the cut bridge at the boulevard. How the roads worked at the time meant that how traffic entered into this area, Joan would always be facing them as they arrived in the center of Gloucester. The Abe Hyatt Andrew Bridge, the one you go over if you come into Gloucester through the Rotary, was not built until 1950, so almost 30 years after this statue was placed. and in just a few short years, we will be celebrating Gloucester's 400th anniversary. The memorial was designed by Leonard Kraft, and though given as a gift in 1923, the statue itself was not placed until August 23rd of 1925. And the ceremony for the reveal of the statue was led by Captain John McKinnon, and in 1923, the city held a dedication ceremony for the spot where the statue would be placed. The statue portion was cast by the Gorham Company of Providence, Rhode Island, and the granite base came from Rockport, where at the time there was a large granite quarrying industry. Many of the memorials and statues we will see on this tour include granite, and much like this base, a lot of it was sourced locally from Rockport. Beneath the granite base, there is a bronze box that holds 47 items about Gloucester. This memorial stands as a remembrance to all the fishermen of Gloucester who lost their lives to the sea. The inscription reads, "They that go down to the sea in ships, 1623 to 1923. In front of the Fisherman's Memorial, you may have noticed that there is a semicircle of plaques. These plaques were placed to remember those men whose names were both known and unknown that were lost at sea. It also remembers the ship that went down, whether the name be known or not. While many men have lost their lives to the sea, these particular plaques were restricted to Gloucester men who were on a Gloucester vessel, or men in vessels who were lost in Gloucester. While the fishing industry has played a large part in Gloucester's past, it has at times been ruthless and caused great loss for the community. Earlier we talked about the Fisherman's Memorial. Now I think it's important to talk about the companion piece to it. The Fisherman's Wives Memorial that took 80 years to make a reality was an original idea by Leonard Kraft, the man who crafted the Fisherman's Memorial. Its design involved a woman in flowing dress holding a baby, looking out to the ocean with an inscription that read, "They also serve who only stand and wait." This model of what he wanted for this memorial can be viewed at the Cape Air Museum. Richard Riccia also tried to create a memorial, and in his concept there was a woman bending to lay a wreath of flowers in the sea. The design was called the Widow of the Fisherman, and had a much sadder tone to it. The statue you see behind me was the final rendition after several, and was sculpted by Morgan Paul Pike, who won the Gloucester Fishermen's Wives Association Design Contest in 1996. The statue is 12 feet tall, and the inscription reads, "The wives, mothers, daughters, and sisters of Gloucester fishermen honor the wives and families of fishermen and mariners everywhere for their faith, diligence, and fortitude." The statue was created as a way to pay homage and tribute to the wives, sisters, mothers, and families who were left at home while their father, husband, or brother went off to sea. It also wants to recognize the contributions made by these women to not only their families, but the community as well. Gloucester had some World War II memorials throughout its different sections. There was never a central one that honored all the men and women at Gloucester who volunteered during the war. The memorial you see behind me was dedicated on July 4th, 2006, and finally there was a World War II memorial. In fact, World War II was the only major conflict since the creation of the United States that did not have a memorial in the city that honored everyone. Much like the Civil War memorial, where there is the central one honoring everyone, and then individual ones for the different sections of the city. This memorial was built not only to honor these men and women who fought for Gloucester, but also the family that these men and women left behind. Though they may not have fought themselves, those left behind did contribute to wartime efforts through rationing, creating victory gardens, and sometimes taking over jobs that those who went to fight left open. They also were left to mourn those who lost their lives fighting, and those who went missing in action. While we must always take the time to remember those who fought, and rightfully so, it is also important to remember the sacrifices those left behind. There are many inscriptions that can be found on this memorial, but I would like to read just a couple. The first one is the President's message. To you who answered the call of your country and served in its armed forces to bring about the total defeat of the enemy, I extend the heartfelt thanks of a grateful nation. As one of the nation's finest, you undertook the most severe task one could be called upon to perform. Because you demonstrated the fortitude, resourcefulness, and calm judgment necessary to carry out these tasks, we now look to you for leadership and example in further exalting our country in peace. President Harry S. Truman. The second inscription I wanted to read states, Gloucester remembers 1941, World War II, 1945. The people of Gloucester proudly dedicate this memorial to our citizens who served and sacrificed in the most devastating war. They valiantly faced the perils of battle to restore freedom around the globe. Dedicated July 4th, 2006.
Towards the end of the boulevard going towards Magnolia, you will find this little garden. Claudia the library lobster has taken up residence next to the Triton sculpture, which is the centerpiece of this garden. Triton is the son of Poseidon, the god of the sea, and many believe that he was capable of controlling the ocean with his conch shell, which you can see he is playing in the sculpture. His supposed ability to control the ocean makes him an understandable choice to place on the boulevard as he looks out onto the water, and so he could always be close to the place he calls home. The sculpture was created by Walker Hancock. Walker was a well-known sculptor, and though not originally from Gloucester, he did come to call Lanesville home after he purchased some land in 1930 and had his home and studio built on it. Surrounding the sculpture is a park. This park was created by the Gloucester Civic and Garden Council to honor Betty Smith, who founded the council and spent a large portion of her life helping to preserve the beauty of Gloucester. There is a small plaque commemorating the area, and while we went over most of the information, I thought the last line was a good way to end our tour here. We hope this small island of beauty will inspire visitors to cherish and create their own beauty wherever they go. Our next stop will be Tablet Rock, so we will see you there.
I'm sure many of you have seen the large rock behind me, or perhaps even climbed to the top of it using the pathways in the back. The large rock is referred to as Tablet Rock. The inscription on the tablet reads, "On this site in 1623, a company of fishermen and farmers from Dorchester, England, under the direction of Reverend John White, founded the Massachusetts Bay Colony. From the time the fisheries, the oldest industry in the Commonwealth, have been uninterruptedly pursued from the port. Here in 1625, Governor Roger Conant, by wise diplomacy, averted bloodshed between contending factions, one led by Miles Standish of Plymouth, the other by Captain Hughes, a notable exemplification of arbitration in the beginnings of New England, placed by the citizens of Gloucester in 1907. Pringle was responsible for writing the inscription on the tablet. Getting this tablet was partially helped along by the Hammonds. You may know John Hayes Hammond Jr. as the inventor and as the guy who built Hammond's Castle. Many monuments are located on the boulevard, and many of these recognize the men and women of Gloucester who have lost their lives either through war or the sea. While we cannot talk about all of them on this tour, I did want to talk about the Revolutionary War Memorial. We'll be talking about this one you see behind me, though there are several throughout the city, including the Revolutionary War cannons. Behind me, you see the Revolutionary War Memorial, which was erected by the Nathaniel Warner Company on May 1st, 1975. And you can see it says, "In memory of those who fought in the Revolutionary War with the Nathaniel Warner Company and those men and women who helped make this a free and independent nation." And then it also lists everybody who was in that company as well. Our last stop of this tour brings us to Dogtown. Dogtown was settled in 1642 because of the availability of water, but also because it helped to provide protection from both pirates and other attacks. After the Revolutionary War, however, the population of Dogtown started to decline, and due to this decline, it would disappear. There were some people who continued to live in Dogtown even after its decline. There are many legends surrounding it, including the one on how it got its name. According to this legend, the original settlement, known as the Commons, became known as Dogtown due to the fact that many of the wives would keep dogs while their husbands were off at sea or away from home. Now that we have a little bit of history of the area, let's talk about the rock you see right here. As you can see, there are words carved into this rock. These words were carved out by quarry workers who were hired by Roger Babson during the Great Depression. Babson claimed that he was trying to write a simple book on rock rather than paper. Babson was a very interesting man who ran for president but was defeated by FDR. He also founded the Gravity Research Foundation to find ways in which to counteract gravity, and in a paper claimed it to be our #1 enemy. His goal with this foundation was try and discover anti-gravity devices that would help people. Babson believed that these quotes would help to inspire people and also become part of students' education. His goal was to have the stone cutting continue even after he was gone, but that did not happen. There were people in the community at the time who did not like what Babson was doing and believed that he was defacing the rocks in the area of Dogtown. Well, it's not hard to understand these carved rocks do fall within the mysteriousness of the area and add to the allure of coming to Dogtown for some travelers.